Hi, good morning and welcome to my studio. Just a little glimpse there of some work, bigger paintings on the wall. Um, some people have asked me about surfaces and how you might prepare them for canvas and for panel. So I'm just going to show you two products that I found on the market yesterday in London. They're from Cass Arts Products, and of course this will be back to front for you, but Artist Cotton Canvas and Linen Canvas. And some of you have wondered why you might use cotton over linen, why you might use linen over cotton, or you just grab the first thing and don't really give it much thought. But there is a difference to cotton and linen. I'm just going to explain that to you. Now, behind these two little things here, I have a little diagram. And what this shows is the difference between the way the fibres in the cotton and the linen are working. Now you might notice that in the cotton the little pattern is quite irregular. It's lots of dots and dashes. That's because the fibres in cotton are quite rough and they don't form strings. They just sort of sit in little short dashes like this. So when you have a cotton canvas, what you'll find is you will get paint that sits on the surface but perhaps can get a little rough. So great if that's the kind of work you want. If you want to do quite textural landscape painting, cotton canvas is brilliant. If you come over to this one, this is linen, and you can immediately see the difference between the linen and the cotton. And with linen, the fibres are laid in very orderly fashion, so quite vertical, quite horizontal, and the fibres are long. So what this means is when you're painting a fine detail work, you'll find that you don't get any irregular bumps or unusual little bobblings that can be very annoying, particularly if you're trying to paint a little bit of someone's nose or something and they end up looking like they've got a wart or something on their nose. So linen is very popular for portrait painters and people who are painting fine detailed work. Cotton canvas is very useful for people who are painting textural and more work on the surface. So that's what I thought I'd show you and explain the difference to you about the two canvases. Here you can see the products. So there we are. You can see the difference between the cotton and the linen. The cotton one is primed, the linen one isn't primed, and I'll talk about that a bit later on too. It's interesting, I mean, some of you probably frame your canvases at home, stretch your canvases at home, and I used to, but I find for the small ones I just buy them. My only hesitation is, can you hear that? And I'll show you the linen one. Take that to one of my music classes. Works quite well. If a canvas sounds like that, it's probably stretched a little bit too tight. Once you get the water on it and other paints on it and things like that, it can actually get a little bit tight. If I was stretching it myself, I wouldn't go for something of that intensity. Anyway, those are the two products, and they're new to Cass, and I'm not a advocate for Cass, but I just was walking by yesterday and I thought, well, this will be good incentive to talk about primings and what surfaces. So I've got three surfaces for you here today. I'm linen, canvas and panel. Different types of products you can use for primings that I just thought I'd do some different ones. I mean, we've got the standard gesso product, which we'll use. That's great. You can use a sealer or a binder. This is a Liquitex one, but Golden make them as well. GAC 100 is the standard one. I've actually just got some matte medium in there, which will work because these canvases are strictly speaking already primed. Another one that I've been using a lot for my rock paintings is a micaceous oxide. What this creates is a really nice gritty surface. It's a lovely way to build up something where you want texture, but you perhaps don't want pumice, which is really gritty. Another product that I use regularly, and for those of you that have been in my workshops, you'll have seen me talking about this one. It's a Art Spectrum product, and The beauty of that is that it comes in different colours. So if you want to prime, like for pastel paper or something, they have, in fact it is a pastel product for pastels, but it's wonderful for painting because again it has a slight bit of grit in it. So what that means is your paint adheres to that first surface very quickly. It stops things sliding off, because one of the worst things is when you've gone to all the effort of priming your canvas or panel and then your whole painting slips off. That's also to do with the paint film that you're using. So if you dilute acrylic paint with too much water, what that does is it destroys the glue that holds the pigments and the paint and the binder together, and that will cause the whole film to break. It just makes it unstable. So when you're working with water, it's kind of important to make sure you get those ratios right, and you will know when you've done it wrong because it'll all slide off. Another thing that I use here, which you probably can't see in there, but is marble dust. Marble dust again is probably what they're using in the Art Spectrum primer here, but it adds a little bit of grit. So when you have a canvas, a cotton canvas for example, and I'm going to be working on a textured basis with the cotton canvas, it's quite nice to add a little bit of marble dust because then you've already built a little bit of that surface into it. Different tools I can use for that product. You can use a brush that's quite stiff. These are Italian brushes. I mean, they use these for painting houses, which is amazing. I mean, gosh. But they're very traditional brushes. They have this copper ferrule here. But the hairs on this brush are very rough. So it gets into all the little crevices and cracks within your canvas. I really like using those. There's another product called a wavy motler, which is these bristles, but in a kind of a wave pattern. That was the traditional way of priming canvases, but they're really expensive brushes, and I found these ones really good for priming. You can use decorators brushes as well, because, well, this is a decorator's brush, just an Italian one, but I find decorators brushes really good for those primings. The other thing I use, I'll show you that side, is sometimes there's a little block of wood, because this can create quite interesting patterns and a surface. So that's after you've placed your initial sealer down and you've got a layer of gesso on, and then you just want to add another layer that's just going to take the paint. So I'll show you that with the Art Spectrum primer. I'll show you that inside. A bit gloopy, it's lovely. Actually, a little bit of this goes a long way. So I'll just get a little bit up there on the palette knife for you. And then using the block, I might just put a little bit of water on that block there, because the block's a little bit dry. Just helps you to go there a little bit faster, but also you create some lovely surface patterns. So if you're doing an abstract painting, you might find, see what kind of surface that creates there on there. If I was using the brush, you can hear that's going into all the little crevices. Creates a different sort of finish though. So that's using the Art Spectrum primer, which has a little bit of grit in it, either using the brush or using a block. And smooth things off. It's really quite nice. I might use the brush to get into the little tricky corners, but I quite like the way it leaves these marks. What these marks are useful for, if you're pouring paint, you've got a natural way for the paint to pool on the surface. So really you're thinking or maybe not thinking, but you're or creating for yourself a whole series of opportunities through putting the primer on in this way, which you might not have had you just got a brush. There is a cheats way as well. I'll just show you this quickly. I'm not going to do it in the studio. That is also brilliant for large scale canvases. So once you've done your layer of gesso and whatever, and I probably recommend about 2 or 3 thin layers of gesso. Liquitex spray paint, there are others, other types of spray paint are wonderful for working on really, really large canvases, because you can obviously do them outside, you can cover quite a lot of distance. They come in all different colours, so if you wanted to use coloured primings on your paintings, then this is a really interesting product to use. So but I'm doing small ones, I don't really need them unless I was doing a series, in which case I probably might put them all outside and spray them and then keep working from there. It's quite nice too if you want to spray over the grit that you put on underneath, so the grit will work through the spray paint, because the spray paint is only a very thin film. So that's the Art Spectrum primer, which is a pastel primer. I will go on to the next one. It's easier to see on this. So this is the Micaceous primer I talked about. This is a golden product. I like this because the primer it's fine. It's not too thick. It's not too lumpy. If I do get fed up of it, I'm not locked in to making a decision of having to use something I don't want later on. And I think if I do some more videos, I will show you some paintings where I've used it, because I really enjoy it. Again, I'll just gloop it out here for you. See, it's got that lovely, you can see that there. So it is quite metallic looking. If you're after that type of surface. Now, you can apply this in several ways. You can use a brush if you want to. Sometimes I use a cloth, and this is a piece of scrim. It's printmaking cloth. It's quite rough, but it's really nice for putting something like this on, because I can get it thick or thin depending on how I want to use it. So you might call this an imprimatura, which is a first layer of paint. It's the one that goes on after you've put your gesso on. I wouldn't do this before I've got the gesso on, but again, you can see that the texture and the surface of that is really interesting. More on that later, because I'll develop that as a painting so you can see what happens when I use an imprimatura like that. I'm going to leave some areas white, actually. I think sometimes less is more. I don't want to overdo that. Okay, now linen. Again, sounds like a drum, a little bit too tight there for me. See up close on the angle, you know, these long fibers. Its surface is quite, it's got a sort of a brittle, slightly brittle surface to it. I'm thinking that what might be quite nice on this might be to use the marble dust. So I'll show you how to mix that up. So we have here, it's like a cooking lesson. We have here about 100 mils of water, half a cup. So if you're making pancakes, you'll know how much that is. Now this is our marble dust. I'm going to take about, you can use as much marble dust as you want. You can make it into a paste like toothpaste, or just have a little bit in there if you just want to create a little bit of surface. Gesso has this in it anyway, and it's got whiting as well, but I don't want something that's going to dry white. I want something that's going to keep this colour of the linen, so marble dust is good for that. So I've got about a teaspoon in there. And to that, I'm going to add the acrylic binder. This is a Liquitex product, but as I say, you can use anything. Now that was really guessing, but it's just a very thin mixture, because I don't want this one to be too heavy. It's got the marble dust in it. I just want a thin coating on top of this raw linen canvas. Why don't I use it straight away? Well, because that's slippery. I don't know what they've put on there. I presume it's okay, but this way I get control over the product by putting my own product on, so I know what layer my paint is going to be sitting on. So I'll put that there. So I've kind of mixed that up. You could put as much binder in it as what. Of course, the more binder you put in, it's going to be more slippery. So I just want to have a little bit. Oh, the sun's coming in. I just want to have a little bit of binder in there just to create a little bit of surface. Probably going to get my trusty brush. There's going to be. I'm going to get a decorator's brush for this one. Just a pot of stuff there. Okay, so I can see when I put the first layer on how I'm going to probably doesn't look like anything on the camera there, but I can see it slightly. I can certainly smell it. Okay, so it's very, very thin. But you can certainly see it on the surface compared to the one here. The difference now is that it's taken off the shininess of the manufactured linen, and I have a slightly matte, a more matte appearance on this canvas here. So I'm going to have to leave that to dry, but that is one way of making that surface something that you want to work. You can work directly on that now. So I'll show you what I'm going to do with that next time I make a video, but I'm going to be putting inks and other products on there, and they'll just sit there, and I can leave some of the linen exposed, which is what I'm after in this particular idea. Okay, so some people have talked to me about panel, and that's just a standard panel, birchwood panel. They're quite nice because you sort of don't really need to get these framed if you don't want to. Let me get some tape. What I often do is tape the edges first before I start, because I'm terribly messy and things drip, and it's sometimes quite nice to be able to deal with that edge later when you've finished your painting. So I'll just tape off these edges. This frog tape is green. I love it. There's a blue variety in the States. I presume it's the same. I've not used that one, but the green one is the one that we can get here in the UK. It's a decorator's tape that's a non-stick one. There's two colours. There's the green and there's a yellow one as well. Frog tape. But the beauty of this is it doesn't lift your work, so you can even be painting with it, and you find that you can just place it on and mask off areas. So after I've taped the edge of that, different things I do on my panels. So I've got different surfaces I use. Sometimes I do encaustic wax, in which case I pour wax on top of this hot wax on top of that surface. So I use that different primers for that. There's a very good encaustic wax primer by R&F, which you can use if you're using encaustic wax. but I'll just do a very simple gesso priming on this. So I'm going to just use the golden gesso for that. We've not had sun for days and now streaming in. So I've got my decorator's brush for this purpose, and bits are coming out. You sort of don't want these flaky bits too soon. You might find you want to do quite a different piece of work. So again, see, I've got no water in this at all, and it does take a long time to just work this first layer in, because that's what you're really trying to do. What you're trying to do is get that first layer into. So the first layer, it's just trying to cover up as much as you can, but it's not at all thick. You can still see a little bit of that wood through that first layer. If you like, you can sand between layers, or you can just keep layering on so you get something quite textured. It's a lovely surface to paint on. What I do sometimes, particularly in that first layer, I might add a little bit, if you remember our gritty solution we made here with the marble dust on that first layer, because it's got a sealer in it, so it's going to seal the wood. Just add a little bit of that into that first layer. So that's the only water that's gone on, and the beauty of this is it has that slight bit of grit. So as it dries, when I put my next layer of gesso on, it's going to adhere to it really easily. Gesso has, as I said, whiting in it, and which is chalk, but it's quite nice to sometimes use a little bit of extra marble dust as well to give you that. So I hope that that's been a little bit of a help there for people that have asked me questions about that. So I will work on these paintings, and then we will see what the results are of the different surfaces that we've got today. Okay, have a good day in the studio. Bye.